Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the English Globe. We are so happy that you are here with us today. This podcast is a special place where we explore important topics from around the world, and at the same time, we help you improve your English step by step. Today, we are going to look at a very big issue that is in the news, that is part of everyday life, and that also teaches us many useful English words and ideas. That issue is the energy crisis in Europe.
Julia.
Thank you, Adam, and hello to everyone listening. It's wonderful to have you with us. Today's topic may sound a little serious, but we will make it simple and clear for all learners. Energy is something that touches all of us, no matter where we live. It is connected to the electricity we use in our homes, the fuel that moves buses and cars, the heat that warms houses in winter, and the machines that make food, clothes, and medicine. Without energy, life in modern society cannot work.
Adam, that's exactly right. So when we talk about an energy crisis, it means that the supply of energy is not enough, or that the price of energy becomes too high for people and businesses. In Europe, many countries have faced this problem in recent years. Some households cannot pay their heating bills. Some factories must slow down production. Some governments have to make difficult decisions about how to find new energy sources. These are serious challenges, and they affect millions of people.
Julia.
Dear listeners, this is why today's episode is so important. Understanding the European energy crisis helps us understand the world economy, international politics, and also the daily lives of ordinary people. At the same time, for you as English learners, this topic will introduce you to useful vocabulary and expressions like energy supply, electricity bills, natural gas, renewable energy, and more. These are words that you will hear in the news, read in articles, or use in conversations.
Adam.
And before we continue, may I kindly ask you for something small but very helpful. If you enjoy listening to the English Globe, please take a moment to like this video. Your support means a lot to us because it helps more learners find our channel. Also, if you have not yet subscribed, please click the subscribe button now. That way, you will never miss our future podcasts. We upload educational content regularly, and it is all designed to help you grow your English in a fun and useful way.
Julia.
Yes, and one more thing. We would really love to hear from you. After listening, please share your opinion in the comments below. Do you think energy is a big problem in your country? How do people in your area deal with electricity, fuel, or heating costs? By sharing your ideas, you are not only practicing English writing, but also joining a community of learners from all around the world. We read your comments carefully, and we often use them to improve our future episodes.
Today's journey will be long and detailed. We will explore why Europe needs so much energy, where it comes from, why there are problems with supply, and how this affects the lives of people. We will also look at what governments are doing and what the future may look like. Don't worry if some parts sound complex. Julia and I will explain everything slowly, clearly, and in simple English. Our goal is to help you understand step by step while you practice listening.
So, dear listeners, sit back, relax, and get ready to learn. You will not only gain knowledge about an important global issue, but also build your English vocabulary, grammar, and listening skills. That is the beauty of this podcast. It is about the world and about language at the same time. We are so excited to guide you through this journey. Now, let's begin by asking a simple but powerful question. What is energy, and why is it so important in our lives?
Before we go deeper into Europe's situation, let's take a step back. Let's ask a very basic question. What is energy? In science, energy is the ability to do work or to make something happen. But in daily life, energy usually means the electricity that powers our lights, the fuel that runs our cars, the gas that heats our homes, or even the food that gives us strength. Energy is everywhere around us. Without energy, modern life would stop almost instantly.
That's such an important point. Imagine for a moment if the electricity in your house went off for just one day. No lights, no fridge, no internet, no phone charger, no heater or air conditioner. Daily life would suddenly feel very difficult. Now imagine if this happened not just in one house but in a whole city, or even across an entire country. That shows us how dependent we are on energy. It is the hidden force that keeps everything working smoothly.
Exactly. And there are many different types of energy. For example, there is coal, which is a black rock that people have burned for centuries to produce heat and electricity. Then there is oil, a liquid fuel that is turned into gasoline and diesel for cars, buses, and airplanes. We also have natural gas, which is often used for heating homes and cooking food. Some countries use nuclear power, which comes from splitting atoms. And of course, there are renewable energies like wind, solar, and hydro.
Yes, and every type of energy has its own strengths and weaknesses. Coal is cheap, but produces a lot of pollution. Oil is very powerful, but the price can rise quickly when supply is low. Natural gas is cleaner than coal, but many countries must import it. Nuclear power produces no air pollution, but it creates dangerous waste. Renewables like solar and wind are clean, but they depend on the weather. All of these forms together create the complex energy mix that keeps societies alive.
Listeners, I want you to notice some important vocabulary here. Words like electricity, coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear power, renewable energy. These are words you will hear often in the news. You may also hear power plants, which are big factories that produce electricity, or pipelines, which are large tubes that transport oil and gas across long distances. Learning these words will help you understand global news and also give you the ability to talk about energy in English conversations.
Another simple way to think about energy is to see it as the fuel of modern life. Just like your body cannot move without food, our cities and countries cannot move without energy. Every bus that takes children to school, every computer that you use to study, every hospital machine that saves lives, all of them need energy. This is why governments spend so much time and money thinking about energy supply. Without energy, society cannot move forward.
That's a great comparison. And dear listeners, think about your own daily life. How many times do you use energy without even noticing it? You wake up and turn on the light. You take a shower with hot water that has been heated by gas or electricity. You cook breakfast on a stove powered by gas or electricity. You check your phone, which is charged with electricity. From the moment we open our eyes to the moment we sleep, energy is serving us constantly.
And this is exactly why an energy crisis is so serious. If something interrupts the flow of energy, like a war, a shortage of supply, or very high prices, then life becomes harder for everyone. Families must pay more for heating or cooking. Schools and hospitals face higher costs. Businesses may struggle to keep running. So when Europe faces an energy crisis, it is not just about numbers or markets. It is about real people and their everyday lives. That is why this topic matters.
Dear listeners, this is also a chance for you to build a strong connection between language learning and real-world issues. By listening today, you are not only practicing English vocabulary and listening comprehension, but you are also learning how the world works. This is powerful because when you read the news in English or join conversations with people from other countries, you will already know key words and ideas, and you can share your own views with more confidence.
To summarize this part, let's remember three main things. First, energy is the ability to do work, and in daily life, it means electricity, fuel, heat, and power. Second, there are many sources of energy: coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear, and renewables, and each one has benefits and challenges. Third, energy is essential for modern life. Without it, schools, hospitals, businesses, and homes cannot function. With these ideas clear in your mind, you will better understand why a crisis is so serious.
Wonderful. Now that we have built this foundation, we are ready to go deeper. In the next section, we will talk about why Europe depends so much on imported energy and why this dependence has become such a big problem. But before we move there, take a moment to think. In your own country, which types of energy are most important? Do people use coal, gas, or renewables? By asking yourself this question, you practice thinking in English and connecting the lesson to your life. Now that we understand what energy is and why it is important, let's talk about Europe. Europe is a continent with many countries, and most of these countries do not produce enough energy to meet their own needs. This means they must import energy from other countries. Importing energy means buying electricity, gas, or oil from foreign countries. Europe depends on imports for a large part of its energy, especially natural gas and oil.
That's right, Adam. Think about it like this. If you live in a country that does not have enough oil or gas, you must buy it from someone else. Europe buys energy from many countries around the world. For example, Russia has been one of the largest suppliers of natural gas to Europe. Norway provides both oil and gas. Other countries in Africa and the Middle East also export oil. Importing energy keeps Europe running, but it also creates dependence.
Let's pause on that word, dependence. Energy dependence means that a country relies on others to get the energy it needs. If something happens in the supplier country, like political tensions or a conflict, the supply can stop or become more expensive. For instance, if gas pipelines are closed or damaged, European countries may not get enough gas. This is a major reason why Europe sometimes faces energy problems.
Listeners, pipelines are very important in this story. A pipeline is a large tube that carries gas or oil over long distances. Some pipelines go under the sea. Others go through mountains and forests. Pipelines are faster and cheaper than shipping gas or oil by trucks. However, they can also be dangerous. If a pipeline is blocked or broken, energy supply is reduced. That is why countries want multiple sources of energy.
Another important term is LNG, which stands for liquefied natural gas. LNG is natural gas that is cooled to a liquid form, so it can be transported by ship. This allows countries to get gas from faraway places that do not have pipelines connected to Europe. For example, Europe imports LNG from the United States, Qatar, and other countries. LNG helps reduce dependence on a single supplier, but it is more expensive than pipeline gas.
Now let's think about why Europe imports so much energy. One reason is geography. Many European countries do not have enough oil or gas reserves. For example, Germany, France, and Italy rely heavily on imports. Another reason is economics. Producing energy locally can be more expensive than importing it from countries where energy is cheaper. Also, some countries are focusing on clean energy, like wind and solar, but these sources cannot always meet all needs, especially during winter or cloudy days.
Yes, and when we talk about energy dependence, it is not only about gas and oil. Europe also imports coal, uranium for nuclear power, and even electricity from neighboring countries. This creates a network of interdependence. If one country faces a problem, it can affect others. For example, if Russia reduces gas supply, many European countries must find alternative sources. This is exactly what has happened in recent years, leading to higher energy prices and more public concern.
Let's also notice some new vocabulary. Words like import, export, dependence, pipeline, LNG, reserves, interdependence. These are very useful for discussing global energy issues. By using them in sentences, you can explain why one country needs another, why markets change, or why governments make certain decisions. For example, you can say, Germany imports gas from Russia, or Europe depends on multiple energy suppliers to ensure stability.
Dear listeners, think about this. Energy dependence is like borrowing sugar from a neighbor. If your neighbor suddenly stops lending sugar, you have a problem. Similarly, if a country depends on energy from another country and supply is reduced, there are serious consequences. Europe has learned this lesson many times. That is why countries are trying to diversify their energy sources and invest in renewable energy, which we will discuss in a later section.
Before we finish this part, it's also important to understand that energy dependence is not just a technical issue. It affects politics, economics, and daily life. Governments must negotiate with supplier countries, plan energy storage, and prepare emergency options. Companies must adjust their operations. Families may face higher energy bills. All of this shows how interconnected the world is, and how something as simple as gas or oil can influence millions of lives.
So, dear listeners, Europe's reliance on imported energy explains why the continent is vulnerable to crises. Supply disruptions, price increases, and political tensions can all affect people's lives directly. Understanding this gives us a clearer picture of why news about Europe's energy situation is always important. And for you as English learners, knowing these terms and concepts helps you read articles, watch videos, and talk about the world confidently.
To summarize, Europe depends on energy imports because many countries cannot produce enough energy themselves. Pipelines, LNG, and interdependence are key terms to understand. Dependence on foreign suppliers creates risks, but it also shows the complex connections in our modern world. Keeping these ideas in mind will help you understand the next part of our podcast, where we will explore the geopolitical factors behind the energy crisis.
Dear listeners, now that we know about Europe's dependence on imported energy, let's talk about something very important: geopolitics. Geopolitics is the study of how countries interact with each other, and how politics, geography, and resources influence global decisions. In the case of Europe's energy crisis, geopolitics plays a huge role. Political tensions, conflicts, and international relationships can affect the supply and price of energy in ways that touch everyone's daily life.
That's right, Adam. For example, Europe imports a large portion of its natural gas from Russia. Russia is a big country with huge gas reserves, and pipelines connect it to many European countries. However, if political relations between Russia and European nations become tense, Russia may reduce the gas supply or increase prices. This is not just about politics for leaders. It directly affects households, industries, and governments.
Let's pause for some vocabulary. Words like tension, supply, restriction, political decision, dependency. These words appear often in news about global energy. For instance, you might read, "Energy prices rise because of political tension between countries," or "A country may reduce energy supply due to dependency conflicts." By learning these words, you can explain complicated situations in simple English.
Another important term is sanctions. Sanctions are measures taken by one country to punish or pressure another country, often for political reasons. For example, if a country violates international rules, other countries may stop trading with it or restrict its exports. In Europe's energy case, sanctions can limit energy imports from certain countries, creating shortages and increasing prices. It shows how politics and energy are tightly connected.
Dear listeners, conflicts also have a major impact. Wars, disagreements over borders, or internal unrest in energy-producing countries can reduce energy production or make transportation dangerous. For example, if pipelines are at risk due to conflict, energy may not reach Europe on time. Even small interruptions can have large effects, because Europe relies on continuous supply to keep homes warm, factories running, and transportation moving.
Negotiation is another key word here. Countries often negotiate energy deals to secure reliable supplies. Sometimes negotiations succeed, and gas or oil flows smoothly. Other times, negotiations fail, and supplies are reduced. European leaders constantly negotiate with supplier countries, balancing prices, contracts, and political relationships. These talks can last months or even years, and they affect the lives of millions.
Let's also remember that energy is used as a tool in politics. Countries with large energy resources can influence other countries' decisions. For instance, if a supplier country increases prices or limits supply, importing countries face difficult choices. They may need to pay more, use less energy, or find alternatives. This is called energy leverage, and it shows how energy and politics are deeply linked.
Listeners, think about dependency again. If a country depends too much on one supplier, it becomes vulnerable. Geopolitical events like sanctions, wars, or disagreements can suddenly create a crisis. This is exactly what Europe has experienced. Governments must plan for emergencies, store energy, and look for multiple suppliers to reduce risk. Vocabulary like vulnerability, crisis, leverage, emergency supply is very useful for discussing these topics.
And dear learners, this is why studying geopolitics is not just for experts. It helps us understand why energy prices rise, why governments act in certain ways, and why everyday life can be affected by faraway events. For example, if you see a news headline saying, "Gas supply reduced due to political conflict," you now know it means countries are in tension, pipelines or trade are affected, and European homes may pay more for heating.
Another point to remember is that geopolitics is not only about one country. Europe is made of many countries, and each has its own relationships with energy suppliers. Sometimes they cooperate, sometimes they compete. This creates a complex web of diplomacy, trade, and strategy. Understanding this web helps us see why energy crises happen and why solutions are complicated. Words like cooperation, competition, diplomacy, strategy are very useful in English discussions about international issues.
Finally, dear listeners, geopolitics shows us that energy is more than just electricity or gas. It is a tool, a resource, and a global issue. Political decisions, conflicts, and negotiations directly influence how energy flows, how prices change, and how countries prepare for challenges. Understanding these factors is essential to understand Europe's current energy crisis and to follow international news in English with confidence.
To summarize this section, geopolitical factors include political tension, conflicts, sanctions, negotiations, and energy leverage. These factors can reduce supply, increase prices, and create vulnerability for importing countries. By learning these concepts and the related vocabulary, you not only understand Europe's energy crisis, but also improve your ability to talk about global issues clearly in English.
Now that we understand geopolitical factors, let's look at another very important part of Europe's energy crisis: economics. Economics is the study of how money, resources, and trade work. In the case of energy, economics explains why prices rise, why supply may not meet demand, and why some people pay more for electricity or gas. Economic causes are closely connected to markets, trade, and human behavior.
That's right, Adam. One of the first economic concepts we need to understand is supply and demand. Supply means how much energy is available, and demand means how much energy people want to use. When demand is higher than supply, prices go up. This is very simple, but in real life, it can create serious problems. For example, during a cold winter, the demand for gas and electricity rises. But if the supply cannot increase quickly, prices increase dramatically.
Another factor is shortages. A shortage happens when there is not enough energy to meet the needs of people and businesses. Shortages can occur because production is low, imports are delayed, or storage is insufficient. When there is a shortage, energy becomes more expensive, and households and companies must spend more money to get what they need. Shortages also create uncertainty, which affects markets and governments.
Listeners, it's also important to understand the concept of inflation. Inflation means that the general price of goods and services rises over time. When energy prices rise, it affects many other things. For example, transportation becomes more expensive, food prices increase because trucks and ships use fuel, and industries must pay more to produce goods. Inflation can make daily life more costly for ordinary people, especially if wages do not increase at the same pace.
Another key economic term is market volatility. This means that prices go up and down quickly, often because of sudden changes in supply or demand. For instance, if a pipeline stops working or a supplier increases prices, European energy markets can become very volatile. Volatility makes it difficult for companies to plan, for governments to budget, and for households to manage their bills.
And don't forget the supply chain. The supply chain is the system that moves energy from producers to consumers. It includes pipelines, ships, storage facilities, and distribution networks. If any part of the supply chain is disrupted, energy may not reach its destination. Economic problems like delays in transportation or higher shipping costs can therefore raise prices and worsen the crisis.
Dear listeners, consider this simple example. Imagine a factory that produces electricity using gas imported from another country. If the price of gas suddenly doubles, the factory must pay more. Then electricity prices rise for households and businesses. If multiple factories face the same situation, the entire economy is affected. This chain reaction shows how economics connects energy, prices, and people's daily lives.
Let's also remember that speculation can affect prices. Speculation happens when investors buy or sell energy contracts based on expectations of future prices. Sometimes speculation makes prices rise faster than real supply and demand changes. For English learners, useful words here include speculation, contract, investor, price trend. These terms often appear in news about energy, markets, or global trade.
And there is another factor: global demand. Energy is a worldwide market. When countries outside Europe use more energy, the supply for Europe may decrease. For example, during a cold winter in Asia, demand for gas rises there, and Europe may have to compete for the same supply. This competition increases prices and can worsen the economic impact on European households and businesses.
Listeners, let's not forget about government policies and taxes. Some governments place taxes on energy to encourage efficiency or reduce pollution. While this is good for the environment, it can also increase energy prices in the short term. Subsidies, on the other hand, can help reduce costs for households or industries. Understanding these economic tools helps explain why energy prices fluctuate and why people sometimes feel financial pressure.
So, dear listeners, to summarize the economic causes, they include supply and demand imbalances, shortages, inflation, market volatility, global competition, supply chain problems, speculation, and government policies. Each of these factors can increase prices, create uncertainty, and affect people's lives directly. Understanding economics is essential to understanding why Europe's energy crisis is happening now.
And importantly, learning these terms and concepts in English helps you read news, watch videos, and discuss current affairs with confidence. Words like shortage, inflation, volatility, supply chain, speculation, competition, price spike are very useful. By practicing them in context, you not only improve your vocabulary, but also gain insight into real-world issues that affect millions of people.
With this foundation in economics, we are ready to explore the next part of the story: the role of renewable energy in Europe and how it is both helping and facing challenges. But before we move, take a moment to think: how do rising energy prices affect your life or the lives of people around you? Reflecting on these questions helps you connect English learning with real-world understanding. Dear listeners, now that we have discussed the economic causes of Europe's energy crisis, let's explore one of the most important solutions: renewable energy. Renewable energy is energy that comes from natural sources that do not run out, like the sun, wind, or water. Europe is investing heavily in renewables because they are clean, sustainable, and can reduce dependence on imported fossil fuels. Countries like Germany, Spain, and Denmark are leading this effort with solar, wind, and hydro projects.
That's right, Adam. Renewable energy, or green energy, is very important for Europe's future. Green energy means energy that is produced without polluting the environment. For example, solar panels capture sunlight and turn it into electricity. Wind turbines use the power of wind to generate energy. Hydroelectric plants use moving water in rivers or dams. These methods are much cleaner than burning coal or oil. They help fight climate change and create a more sustainable energy system.
Let's talk a little more about solar energy. Solar panels are devices placed on rooftops or in large fields to capture sunlight. The sunlight is converted into electricity through special materials inside the panels. Solar energy works best on sunny days, but it can still generate electricity when it is cloudy, though at a lower level. Solar energy is renewable, abundant, and does not produce harmful emissions, which is why many European countries are building large solar farms.
And wind energy is another key source. Wind turbines are very tall machines with large blades that spin when the wind blows. The spinning blades drive a generator that produces electricity. Europe, especially northern countries like Denmark and the Netherlands, uses wind energy extensively. Offshore wind farms, which are built in the sea, capture stronger winds and produce large amounts of energy. Wind energy is clean and renewable, but it depends on the weather and wind speed.
Hydroelectricity is also very important in Europe. It uses the energy of flowing water in rivers or dams to produce electricity. Hydropower has been used for a long time and is very reliable. It can provide energy almost constantly, unlike solar or wind, which can vary depending on weather conditions. Hydroelectric plants can also store water and release it when energy demand is high, helping balance the grid. This makes hydropower a flexible and valuable energy source.
Listeners, while renewable energy has many advantages, it also has some challenges. First, renewable sources like solar and wind are intermittent, meaning they do not produce energy all the time. Second, storing renewable energy for later use can be difficult and expensive. Batteries and other storage systems are improving, but they cannot yet store all the energy Europe needs. Third, building renewable infrastructure, such as solar farms and wind turbines, requires large investments and planning.
Despite these challenges, the European Union and individual countries are committed to increasing the share of renewable energy. Policies and incentives, such as subsidies for solar panels or tax reductions for green projects, encourage businesses and households to adopt renewable energy. European governments also invest in research to improve efficiency and storage technology. The long-term goal is to create a cleaner, more reliable energy system that reduces dependence on imports and fossil fuels.
And dear listeners, let's remember some useful vocabulary. Words like green energy, solar panels, wind turbines, hydroelectricity, energy storage, renewable resources. You will often hear these words in news about energy, climate, and technology. By learning them, you can talk about energy in English, explain environmental solutions, and even discuss international policies. Practicing these words in sentences will make you confident in conversations and writing.
Another advantage of renewable energy is that it is environmentally friendly. Unlike coal or oil, renewables do not produce carbon dioxide or other harmful gases. This helps reduce global warming and air pollution. Many Europeans are aware of climate change and support green energy initiatives. People feel proud to use energy that is clean and safe for the environment. This awareness also encourages governments to continue investing in renewable energy projects.
However, it's important to keep in mind the limitations. Renewable energy cannot completely replace fossil fuels immediately. Europe still needs gas, oil, and coal to meet its energy demand, especially during winter when solar panels produce less energy and wind can be calm. That is why renewable energy is part of a transition, not a full solution yet. balancing renewable and traditional energy sources is key to stability and affordability.
Listeners, Europe's push for renewables shows that countries are thinking long-term. Investing in clean energy is not only good for the environment, but it also reduces energy dependence, improves security, and can create new jobs in technology, construction, and maintenance. People who work with solar panels, wind turbines, and hydropower plants are part of a growing green economy. This economic benefit is an additional advantage of renewable energy.
And dear learners, notice how all these ideas connect: clean energy, sustainability, investment, employment, and security. Using vocabulary like green energy, renewable, sustainability, infrastructure, investment, you can describe solutions to energy problems clearly. For example, you could say, Germany invests in renewable energy to reduce fossil fuel dependence, or wind turbines produce electricity without polluting the air.
To summarize this section, Europe is actively investing in renewable energy to create a cleaner and more sustainable future. Solar panels, wind turbines, and hydroelectric plants provide green energy that reduces pollution and dependence on imported fossil fuels. Although there are challenges like intermittency and storage, renewables are becoming increasingly important. Learning about them also gives you useful vocabulary and a better understanding of global energy issues.
Dear listeners, by understanding renewable energy, you see that Europe is trying to balance environmental responsibility, energy security, and economic stability. This shows us that energy is not only about keeping lights on, it's also about protecting the planet and planning for the future. And for you as English learners, these concepts and words give you tools to discuss the world in simple and clear English.
Now that we have explored Europe's energy sources and renewable solutions, let's talk about the very real impact of the energy crisis on people and businesses. When energy becomes scarce or expensive, it affects everyone. Households may struggle to pay electricity, gas, or heating bills. Families may turn down heating in winter to save money. This situation is often called energy poverty, and it has become a growing problem in many European countries.
That's right, Adam. Energy poverty happens when people cannot afford the energy they need for basic living. Imagine a family in Germany or Italy during winter, trying to stay warm but facing very high gas bills. Some people must make hard choices between heating, food, and other necessities. This shows that the energy crisis is not just about numbers on charts or market prices. It is about real human lives and daily struggles.
Another major impact is on consumers in general. Prices for electricity, heating, and fuel have risen sharply in recent years. For example, filling a car with gasoline or diesel has become more expensive. Households with electric heating see higher electricity bills. Even food costs can rise because transporting goods requires fuel. This ripple effect shows how interconnected energy is with the entire economy and daily life.
Industries and businesses are also affected. Factories that need large amounts of electricity or gas to produce goods face higher production costs. Some industries like steel, chemicals, and manufacturing are particularly vulnerable. When energy prices rise, businesses may have to increase the price of their products, reduce output, or even lay off workers. These challenges create economic pressure and uncertainty across many sectors.
Listeners, let's also notice the vocabulary here. Words like household, energy bills, factories, production costs, consumers, energy poverty, economic pressure. By practicing these words in context, you can explain the impact of crises in English. For example, you could say, rising energy bills create pressure on consumers, or factories face high production costs due to expensive electricity.
Another consequence of high energy prices is social stress. When families and businesses face financial strain, it can lead to frustration, protests, or political debates. Governments are often pressured to act quickly to support households or subsidize energy costs. Understanding these social effects helps us see the broader picture. Energy crises do not just affect markets, they affect people's daily experiences and the functioning of society.
And dear listeners, it is important to understand that energy affects small and large businesses differently. Small shops may have little flexibility and struggle to pay bills, while large companies may have resources but still face high operating costs. For example, bakeries, laundries, and local factories must carefully plan their energy usage. Sometimes they must limit operations to reduce costs, which affects employment and local economies.
One more effect is on consumer behavior. People may try to save energy by turning off lights, reducing heating, or using appliances less frequently. Some households invest in energy-efficient technologies, like LED lights or insulated windows. While this is positive for long-term sustainability, it also shows how energy costs can influence daily choices and habits. Vocabulary like efficiency, consumption, energy saving, behavior is very useful for learners.
Dear listeners, think about this. Energy is something we often take for granted until a crisis hits. When electricity or gas becomes expensive, suddenly every choice matters. People have to plan their daily routines, businesses must manage costs carefully, and governments must provide support. This is why energy security and affordability are essential topics in Europe and worldwide.
And let's not forget the emotional impact. High energy prices can create anxiety and stress. Families worry about paying bills. Businesses worry about survival. Communities may face challenges maintaining heating, lighting, and essential services. By learning words like stress, worry, pressure, affordability, crisis, you can explain how events affect people's lives in English. These words make your language more expressive and precise.
To summarize this section, the energy crisis impacts households, industries, and society at large. Families face rising bills and energy poverty. Businesses struggle with production costs and pricing. Consumers change habits to save energy. Social and emotional effects create additional challenges. Understanding these impacts helps learners connect English vocabulary with real-world issues.
Europe's energy crisis is not only about supply and demand, politics, or economics. It is also about the lives of millions of people, the survival of businesses, and the well-being of society. By learning the vocabulary and concepts in this section, you can talk about these issues in English and understand news, articles, and discussions with confidence. Energy is life, and the crisis shows just how vital it is.
Now that we understand the impact of Europe's energy crisis on households and businesses, let's explore how governments are responding. Governments play a very important role in managing energy supply, prices, and consumption. They use policies, investments, and regulations to stabilize the market and protect people. In Europe, governments have taken several steps to reduce the effects of the crisis and promote long-term energy security.
That's right, Adam. One of the first tools governments use is subsidies. A subsidy is financial support provided by the government to reduce costs for consumers or businesses. For example, governments may give subsidies for electricity, gas, or heating so that households pay less during high-price periods. Subsidies can also encourage the use of renewable energy, like giving financial support to install solar panels or wind turbines.
Another important measure is investments in energy infrastructure. Governments invest in pipelines, electricity grids, storage systems, and renewable projects. These investments improve the reliability of energy supply, reduce dependence on imports, and create jobs. For English learners, words like infrastructure, investment, reliability, supply are very useful. You can say, for instance, the government invests in renewable energy infrastructure to improve supply stability.
Governments also promote energy efficiency. Energy efficiency means using less energy to do the same work. For example, replacing old appliances with energy-efficient ones, improving home insulation, or using LED lighting. Campaigns to increase energy efficiency are very common in Europe. Governments provide guidelines, incentives, and education programs to help people save energy and reduce bills. Vocabulary like efficiency, consumption, energy saving is very useful for learners.
Another important tool is rationing. Rationing means limiting energy usage, usually during shortages. For example, some governments ask households or industries to reduce electricity or gas consumption during peak hours. This helps manage limited supplies and ensures that everyone gets at least some energy. Rationing can be temporary, but it shows how governments must sometimes make hard decisions to balance supply and demand.
Listeners, governments also use regulation and incentives. Regulations can set rules for energy prices, emissions, and usage. Incentives can motivate companies and households to adopt renewable energy or energy-efficient technologies. For example, tax reductions or grants can encourage businesses to install solar panels or upgrade heating systems. These policies aim to reduce dependence on imported energy and increase sustainability over time.
Another response is strategic reserves. Governments may store extra energy, like gas or oil, in large storage facilities. These reserves act as a safety net during supply disruptions or high-demand periods. Strategic reserves help stabilize prices and prevent shortages. Vocabulary like reserve, storage, disruption, safety net is very useful for learners. You could say the government keeps gas reserves to prevent shortages during winter.
Dear listeners, campaigns to raise public awareness are also essential. Governments often launch educational campaigns about energy saving, efficient usage, and renewable adoption. These campaigns encourage people to change habits, such as turning off lights when not in use, reducing heating slightly, or using public transportation. Awareness campaigns help households and businesses contribute to solving the crisis while also saving money.
Let's also remember that governments coordinate with other countries. Europe often works together to manage energy supply and prices across borders. Countries share energy through interconnected grids, pipelines, and agreements. Collaboration helps prevent local shortages from becoming larger problems. Words like coordination, cross-border, collaboration, agreement are useful for English learners to describe international cooperation.
Another important vocabulary set includes policy, regulation, incentive, subsidy, efficiency, rationing. Using these words, learners can explain government actions clearly. For example, you could say, the government offers a subsidy to encourage renewable energy use, or energy rationing is necessary during shortages. By practicing these words, you can describe global crises and solutions in simple, precise English.
To summarize, European governments respond to the energy crisis through subsidies, investments, energy-saving campaigns, rationing, regulations, and strategic reserves. They also coordinate with other countries to ensure stability. These measures aim to reduce prices, protect households, support businesses, and promote long-term energy security. Understanding these policies helps learners see how governments manage complex challenges.
Dear listeners, the role of government is crucial in times of energy crisis. By learning the vocabulary and concepts in this section, you can discuss policy decisions, explain energy-saving strategies, and understand news about government actions. Energy management is not only about technology or markets, it is also about planning, regulation, and leadership to protect society.
Dear listeners, now that we have discussed Europe's energy situation and government responses, let's look beyond Europe. The energy crisis in Europe does not stay in one continent. It has global consequences. When energy prices rise in Europe, they affect trade, markets, and economies around the world. This is because countries are connected through trade, finance, and energy supply. Understanding these global effects helps us see the bigger picture.
That's right, Adam. One important concept is the global market. The global market refers to how goods, energy, and services are bought and sold across countries. When Europe pays more for gas or electricity, it influences global prices. For example, if Europe competes with Asia for liquefied natural gas, prices increase for everyone. Energy is not just local. It is part of a connected global system, and Europe's crisis creates waves that reach other regions.
Another key term is interdependence. Interdependence means countries rely on each other for resources and trade. Europe depends on imports for energy, and other regions depend on Europe as a buyer of goods and energy-related services. When Europe reduces imports or faces high energy costs, it affects countries that export energy, like Russia, the United States, Qatar, and African nations. This shows how interconnected the world really is.
Dear listeners, let's also look at competition. Competition happens when countries or companies try to buy limited resources. During Europe's energy crisis, there is increased competition for gas, oil, and coal. Asian countries like China, Japan, and South Korea compete with Europe for the same energy supplies. When competition rises, prices go up, creating economic pressure globally. Understanding this helps learners see why energy crises are not isolated events.
Another consequence is that global trade costs increase. Higher energy prices mean higher transportation costs. Shipping goods by truck, train, or ship becomes more expensive. Factories in Asia or Africa that export products to Europe may face higher costs, which can lead to higher prices for consumers worldwide. Vocabulary like transportation, export, import, shipping costs is very useful for learners to explain these connections.
Energy shortages in Europe can also affect food prices globally. For example, fertilizers used in agriculture require natural gas for production. When gas prices rise in Europe, fertilizer becomes more expensive, which affects food production not only in Europe, but also in other regions that trade agricultural products with Europe. Vocabulary like fertilizer, agriculture, production cost, supply chain is useful for understanding global effects.
Moreover, energy crises influence international politics. Countries with abundant energy resources may gain more influence, while countries dependent on imports face pressure to secure supply. This can affect diplomacy, trade agreements, and global cooperation. English learners can use words like influence, diplomacy, negotiation, trade agreement to discuss these global interactions clearly and confidently.
Listeners, Africa is also affected. Some African countries export energy resources, like oil or gas, to Europe. When Europe reduces imports or faces high prices, it affects African exporters' revenue. On the other hand, countries that import energy or manufactured goods from Europe may also experience higher costs. This shows that Europe's energy situation has ripple effects across multiple continents.
Asia, as I mentioned before, faces similar consequences. Asian countries compete with Europe for LNG and other resources. High prices in Europe can create volatility in Asian markets, affecting industries, households, and governments. For learners, words like volatility, market stability, resource allocation are important to describe these global trends.
Another important vocabulary is global interdependence, competition, energy prices, supply chain, trade network. By using these words, learners can explain how Europe's crisis impacts the world. For example, you could say, rising energy prices in Europe affect global trade. Or, countries compete for limited energy supplies due to Europe's crisis. Using these terms makes your English discussions about current affairs precise and professional.
To summarize this section, Europe's energy crisis affects the global market through price changes, competition, and interdependence. Other regions, including Asia and Africa, feel the effects on energy costs, trade, and production. Understanding these global consequences shows learners that energy crises are not just local problems. They are connected to the whole world.
Dear listeners, by learning about the global impact of Europe's energy crisis, you not only expand your knowledge of world affairs, but also improve your English. Words like global market, interdependence, competition, supply chain, trade help you explain complex events clearly. Energy connects countries, economies, and people, and understanding this connection is essential for following international news confidently.
Dear listeners, as we conclude this series on Europe's energy crisis, let's reflect on the lessons we can learn, not only about energy, but also about life, planning, and global thinking. Europe's crisis shows us how interconnected the world is. A shortage or price rise in one region affects people and economies globally. This teaches us the importance of global awareness and paying attention to world events.
That's right, Adam. One of the most important lessons is sustainability. Using energy wisely, investing in renewable resources, and reducing waste are essential steps for the future. Sustainability is not just a technical term, it is a principle that affects our daily lives, businesses, and global development. Learning about these concepts in English also helps learners expand their vocabulary and understanding of international issues.
Another lesson is crisis management. Governments, companies, and families must be ready for unexpected events, like sudden energy shortages. Planning, flexibility, and adaptation are key. For example, households may adopt energy-saving measures, industries may adjust production, and governments may implement policies to stabilize the market. Vocabulary like crisis management, resilience, adaptation, contingency is very useful for learners.
Dear listeners, the crisis also teaches us about resilience. Resilience means the ability to recover from difficulties. Europe is working to improve energy systems, adopt new technologies, and support citizens during challenging times. This principle of resilience is important for learners as well. Learning English, facing global events, or managing challenges in life requires persistence and flexibility.
Another takeaway is cooperation. Countries, companies, and individuals must work together to overcome challenges. European countries share energy, technologies, and best practices. Globally, nations compete and cooperate at the same time, balancing trade, resources, and diplomacy. Learners can use words like cooperation, collaboration, partnership to explain international solutions and teamwork.
Energy crises also highlight the power of knowledge. By understanding causes, consequences, and solutions, people can make better decisions. English learners benefit from connecting language learning with real-world knowledge. Using new vocabulary to discuss energy, economics, and politics strengthens both comprehension and communication skills.
Another important lesson is about personal responsibility. Every person can contribute to energy saving, whether by turning off lights, using efficient appliances, or choosing renewable options when possible. Small actions collectively make a difference. Vocabulary like responsibility, contribution, awareness helps learners describe actions that protect the environment and support sustainability.
Dear listeners, notice how all these lessons connect. Sustainability, resilience, cooperation, crisis management, and personal responsibility are interlinked. English learners can use these concepts to discuss global challenges, describe solutions, and participate in conversations about important topics. Using clear sentences and simple words makes your discussion more effective.
Another lesson from Europe's energy crisis is the importance of long-term planning. Energy policies, renewable investments, and infrastructure development are not short-term fixes. They take years to implement. Learning to plan, anticipate challenges, and invest in knowledge is as important for individuals as it is for governments. Vocabulary like long-term planning, strategy, foresight is very useful for learners.
Finally, This crisis teaches us that energy is life. It affects households, industries, governments, and the global economy. Understanding energy issues gives us insight into economics, politics, and international relations. For English learners, connecting language with real-world events makes learning more practical and interesting. Words like energy security, global market, sustainability, cooperation become tools to discuss the world confidently.
To summarize, dear listeners, Europe's energy crisis provides many lessons. Think globally, act sustainably, plan carefully, cooperate with others, and learn continuously. By using the vocabulary and concepts we discussed, you can improve your English while understanding real-world issues. Energy connects everyone, and learning about it strengthens both knowledge and language skills.
Dear learners, remember that every challenge offers an opportunity to learn. By observing global events, discussing solutions, and practicing English, you develop both language and critical thinking. Keep exploring, stay curious, and notice how energy, cooperation, and sustainability shape our world. Thank you for joining us in this journey of learning English through current affairs.
As we reach the end of our discussion on Europe's energy crisis, it's time to reflect on what we have learned. We started by understanding the causes: geopolitical tensions, economic pressures, and dependence on imported energy. Then, we explored renewable energy, government policies, and the impact on people and businesses. Finally, we discussed how Europe's situation affects the global market. These insights give us a full picture of the crisis and its consequences.
That's right, Adam. By looking at all these factors, we can see that energy is not just about electricity or gas. It is connected to economics, politics, society, and the environment. Renewable energy, for example, offers hope for a cleaner and more sustainable future. But it also faces challenges such as intermittency and storage. Governments play a key role in managing the crisis, supporting households, and encouraging green solutions.
Dear listeners, the future of Europe's energy landscape will likely involve a combination of renewable growth and careful planning. Countries are investing in solar, wind, and hydro projects to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. Technological innovation, such as better batteries and smarter grids, will make renewable energy more reliable. As a result, Europe aims for a more secure and environmentally friendly energy system.
And cooperation is another key point for the future. European countries must work together, sharing energy resources, expertise, and infrastructure. International collaboration also helps manage global markets and stabilize prices. Vocabulary like cooperation, collaboration, partnership, global awareness is very useful for learners when discussing how countries address shared challenges.
Another lesson for learners is the importance of energy security. Energy security means having reliable and affordable access to energy at all times. Europe has learned that relying too much on one supplier can create vulnerability. By diversifying energy sources and investing in renewables, countries aim to achieve greater security and reduce the risk of future crises.
Dear listeners, notice how energy is connected to global affairs. Prices, supply chains, and political decisions in one region can affect economies and people around the world. Learning vocabulary like sustainability, energy security, cooperation, renewable growth, global awareness allows you to describe these connections in English clearly and confidently.
Another important point is that challenges create opportunities. The energy crisis pushes innovation in renewable technology, encourages more efficient energy use, and highlights the importance of international cooperation. English learners can also see an opportunity here. By discussing real-world issues in English, you improve your language skills while understanding global events.
Yes, Adam. For example, when you hear about energy policies, subsidies, or green initiatives, you can now explain them using the vocabulary we discussed. Subsidy, efficiency, rationing, renewable growth, interdependence. This not only strengthens your English, but also helps you think critically about world affairs and solutions to complex problems.
Dear listeners, let's reflect on the big picture. Europe is navigating a difficult period, but the crisis also drives progress toward renewable energy, better energy management, and stronger cooperation among countries. Learning about these trends gives you insight into how global issues unfold and why energy remains central to everyday life and international relations.
To summarize, Europe's energy crisis has taught us many lessons. The importance of renewable energy, the role of governments in managing crises, the impact on households and businesses, and the global consequences of local energy issues. For English learners, it is also a lesson in connecting language learning with real-world understanding. Vocabulary and comprehension grow together with awareness of global events.
Finally, dear learners, notice how energy connects everything: economics, politics, society, and the environment. By understanding these connections and using the vocabulary we discussed, you can talk about energy and world affairs confidently. Keep practicing, reading news in English, and discussing current events. This will improve your English while keeping you informed about global issues.
Dear listeners, thank you for joining us today. Remember, the future of energy depends on innovation, cooperation, and careful planning. As learners, pay attention to vocabulary and concepts related to energy, economics, and global affairs. By doing so, you not only improve your English skills, but also gain a deeper understanding of the world around you. Energy truly connects us all.
That's right, Julia. We hope this discussion has helped you understand Europe's energy crisis and its global implications. By learning new vocabulary and linking it to real-world situations, you can enhance both your English and your awareness of international developments. Remember, knowledge and language skills go hand in hand.
Dear listeners, keep exploring, stay curious, and notice how energy, politics, and economics are all connected. By learning English through real-world topics, you strengthen your ability to communicate ideas, understand news, and participate in discussions about important issues. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.